This is the time to stand up now. We can't carry on like this.
Very good evening. Here again, we've been... I've seen you more than I've seen my friends and family. Okay. When we revealed last week that Royton Medical Centre was actually Dr CHAUHAN's surgery, at the time they'd all tried to keep it a secret. I think now that's a given. The Oldham Times, the Oldham Chronicle, the councillors, nothing from the Lib Dems at the time, nothing from the Conservatives at the time, nothing definitely from any of the Labour politicians, including Amanda Chadderton and Jim McMahon. Nothing from anyone in the public domain. And the web page, you saw the name first of all, hidden, disguised, whatever you want to call it, and then removed. And because of what we've done relentlessly over the last week or so, that's come out. He's the senior GP partner at Royton Medical Centre. The medical centre, that is to all extents and purposes a death trap, because that's the only conclusion I can get to because of the findings found by the Care Quality Commission. Evening, gentlemen. So, let's go back to his declarations of interest. This one will do. Employment, office, trade, profession or vocation. You should disclose any employment, office, trade, profession or vocation carried on for profit or gain, including the name of any profession or body who employs or has appointed you. GP and GP trainer, tutor at Manchester University, director AZ Medics, GP appraiser at NHS Oldham. I'm going to ignore the associated with for a minute because I only get back to that. CEO of Bardock, special advisor Care Quality Commission, director Beacom GP Care Whitefield, director Beacom Healthcare Properties Oldham, director to Caista Homes Limited, Knowsley Medical Centre, Whitworth Medical Centre, the family practice Rochdale. And then he's associated with these places, which is a strange term to use, associated with, wouldn't you say? When he's the senior GP partner, as listed by the Care Quality Commission of Royton Medical Centre. So it's associated with Damhead Medical Centre, North Manchester. Royton Medical Centre, Market Street, Royton. So that's 2. Dale Medical Practice, Malcure Road, Rochdale. That's 3. 4. Dale is 3 in Rochdale. Beacon Medical Practice, Blakely is 4. Fallowfield Medical Centre is 5. Lime Square Medical Centre is 6. And Longside Medical Centre is 7. Yet throughout all of this, many of us, many of you, had been telling me about his doctor's surgery in Failsworth, including friends of mine who are registered there, by the way, his patients. By all accounts, and I'm not picking on the guy, by all accounts, he's a caring, compassionate GP on a face-to-face basis. That doesn't excuse any of this, but was Failsworth Medical Centre. So Failsworth Medical Centre, the actual name of the medical centre, and I'll bring it up. is called this: Medlock medical practice. Medlock medical practice. So that's the first question I have, Sue. As do you. I've not missed it, have I? Why is Medlock medical practice not listed? Fair question? I think so. I think it's a fair question. So let's look at what the Care Quality Commission found out about Medlock medical practice. The inspection looks at 5 areas. Is it safe? Is it effective? Is it caring? Is it responsive? And is it well led? In regards to safe, no it isn't, because it requires improvement. In terms of effective, yes. In terms of caring, yes. In terms of responsive, no it isn't. It requires improvement. And yet again, in terms of well led, where previously he was inadequate, on this one, apparently he's just a requires improvement. So it's not safe, it's not responsive, and it's not well led. And just as a comparison, you can see at Royton, services required improvement, responsiveness to people's needs, no, it required improvement, and a services well led was inadequate. So you can see there's comparisons there. So here at Medlock, the only difference is he's improved his well led from requiring improvement to from inadequate, which is what it is at Royton, to requiring improvement at Medlock in Failsworth. Let's go through some of the key findings. So you can check this yourself. Here we go. Medlock medical practice. So you know I'm looking at the right one. This is the inspection evidence table. So this is where the details are. This is where we found all the horrific stuff buried in the detail in terms of the Royton one. So at least here, even though he has DBS checks, it requires improvement. Now there's an anomaly here. If you remember at Royton Medical Centre, he claimed, whoever it was, claimed that DBS checks are carried out by this Beacon whatever group, healthcare group, that Dr CHAUHAN and his brother own. And the DBS checks are only conducted after 6 months, once probationary periods have been completed. So I'd imagine the staff here are more stable. Because if that is still the practice, it's still inadequate as far as I'm concerned. Because you can work there, because it's the same one. Beacon, you know, it's linked to Beacon as well. If you're on probation, you can be a child molester, you can be someone who sexually assaults grannies, all of that. You can be a convicted felon because they won't have done a DBS check on you. Because of their policy of waiting 6 months. But clearly, the staff here had all been there for longer than 6 months, which is why all the DBS checks were done. Yet despite that, it was rated as requiring improvement. And the reason? We go again to the link with Beacon GP Care. That's Dr. CHAUHAN and Dr. CHAUHAN's private company that Dr. CHAUHAN medical centres, keep up with me, subcontract work to. On top of Dr. CHAUHAN getting a substantial salary as a GP partner. Yeah? The practice supplied us with their infection prevention and control policy. This was from Beacon GP Care for the organisation Medlock Medical Practice. Can you see that? The registered manager explained that Beacon GP Care was an umbrella company that provided corporate and clinical governance. So it provides the governance. Remember, this is the same governance that was deemed to be inadequate at Royton, together with an operational structure for individual GP practices that are decided to join the group. The policy stated that the practice worked in conjunction with South Manchester Clinical Commissioning Group. This was inaccurate. Prior to integrated care boards taking over the function of CCGs, that's Clinical Commissioning Groups, in April 22, the practice was a member of NHS Oldham CCG. So they don't even know who they worked in conjunction with in regards of infection prevention and control. They did not know who they even worked with partnership with. They claimed South Manchester Clinical Commissioning Group when they actually worked in was a member of. So I can't say worked in partnership with it because they didn't even know they were a member of that group. That group is NHS Oldham CCG. Following the inspection, the registered manager told us they had provided us with an archived policy and supplied us with the one stated to be in use. However, the policy stated to be in use was dated prior to the policy initially supplied, so it was unclear how the policies had been managed. So no. The policy you've got that says we work with Manchester Medical, South Manchester Clinical Commissioning Group, which is wrong, is an old one. So here's the new one that we should have given you. But the problem is the new one that you've given them, the date predates the old one. I can't possibly comment whether the ink was yet dry on the document that had been provided to the inspectors. I think you are quite entitled to that opinion. Sorry, I need to stop playing with my Kit Kat wrapper. So that's why it requires improvement. It's shocking. It genuinely is shocking. Because they've been caught out and they're coming up with, is it a lie? What other word would you use? And then trying to send paperwork to say, oh no, that was archived. Here's the right one. This was an identical situation at Royton. Yeah. Here we go. Remember the hot boxes at Royton that didn't have the basic essential equipment in them, therefore putting patients at risk, lives at risk. Here is what they've got to say about the hot boxes here. The registered manager and senior partner, I presume the senior partner is Dr. CHAUHAN or the other one, here, registered here, told us in order to make the clinical rooms flexible and able to be used by any GP, they had hot boxes. These were boxes that contained the medical equipment a GP would need for their surgeries. As part of the inspection, we received feedback from staff, including clinicians. Clinical staff told us that the hot boxes were for medical students only. So the registered manager and senior partner are claiming that the hot boxes can be used by any GP, yet the clinical staff told the inspectors that the hot boxes were for medical students only. Who do we believe? They also stated salaried GPs were not always able to access the equipment they required. And when it was provided, it was difficult to locate because of the inconsistent organisation within the clinical rooms. I've used the word death trap previously. I'd find him another doctor's surgery if it was me, David. I'd find him another doctor's surgery if it was me. Of course, that's what you're essentially saying, isn't it, Julie? Why don't you just kit out all the bloody rooms with all the equipment? Track record. Yes, Denise, that's what should happen. But don't you also think there should be clarity on who is allowed to use the hot boxes? Even amongst their own staff, there's confusion of who is allowed to use the hot boxes. The practice did not have a system to learn and make improvements when things went wrong. That's right. The practice did not have a system to learn and make improvements when things went wrong. Again, the same nonsense to do with significant events and learning events as at Royton. We asked the registered manager if there was a policy for learning events. They told us there was no policy, but they thought one would be beneficial to differentiate between significant events and learning events. No, we don't have a policy, but yeah, it would be useful. These doctor surgeries where you are putting your lives over into their care. And the registered manager is scratching his or her head and agreeing with the inspector. Yeah, a policy would be good. A policy would be good. But even though they don't have a policy for learning events, remember, this is their own words, even though they don't have a policy for learning events, the registered manager told the inspectors it was unusual to have a learning event at this practice, Failsworth, as they were usually dealt with before they progressed to a learning event. So if you don't have a policy for a learning event, how can you have dealt with something before it's got to a learning event if you don't have a policy to say whether it still is a learning event? Do you see the contradictions? Can you see? Again, some complaints had been made to the practice that had not been recorded as learning events. So they don't have a policy and they're not recording complaints. I wonder why. There was again a lack of clarity about what should be recorded as a significant event, learning event, or complaint. So there's three things: a significant event, a learning event, and a complaint. They couldn't tell the difference between what was what. Significant learning events and complaints was an agenda item in clinical meetings. We saw minutes stating that there had been a complaint, but no significant learning events. However, this had been formally recorded as a learning event. Discussions around the incidents were not recorded in meeting minutes. Now, the only reason why I think discussions aren't recorded in meeting minutes is to keep what was discussed hidden. I know of no other reason why you would not write in minutes what you've discussed in the minutes in the meeting. It gets worse. We received feedback from clinical team members as part of the inspection. We were told that although significant learning events were mentioned in meetings, learning is not discussed. They told us that who had been involved in the incident was divulged during the discussion, so this could be embarrassing and not encourage reporting. There were no separate significant event meetings or reviews. Any discussion held was in the normal clinical meetings. Clinicians told us that there had been significant events at the practice that had not been recorded in the previous 12 months, and these related to clinical issues. This is their own staff whistleblowing. Let me repeat what has just been said. Clinicians told us that there had been significant events at the practice that had not been recorded in the previous 12 months, and these related to clinical issues. Indeed. Indeed. The Fails of Independent Party should be issuing a statement. They should have read this. They should have forensically gone through this. The senior partner told us learning from significant learning events was shared by a regular newsletter called Knowledge Bites. This was compiled by a clinical pharmacist from Beacon GP Care. So it's another subcontract to that Beacon GP Care, or an element of their subcontracted role, I would imagine. We had feedback from clinicians that these were helpful. No, wait. But they told us they were for sharing the results of clinical audits and other clinical information. And significant learning events were not included. Right? So the senior partner tells the inspector that significant events and learning events were shared by a regular newsletter called Knowledge Bites that's outsourced to Dr. CHAUHAN's company, Beacon GP. But the clinicians who received the newspaper were keen to make sure that the inspectors knew that significant events and learning events were not included in this newsletter. Who to believe? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? Let's have a look at the Knowledge Bites newsletter. And so the inspectors did. The Knowledge Bites we reviewed did not contain information about significant events. So in that bullet point, whoever is that senior partner, and at the very least it's a 50-50 chance it's Dr. CHAUHAN, has been exposed as a liar. Not me saying that. That is from this bullet point. For those who are new to these transmissions, my name is Raja Amir. Indeed, I'm just looking at my name come up. I do have an MBE. I was awarded it by the age I was 30 for the work I had already done in keeping our country and our young people safe from extremists. I'm 50 in a few months, so I have 20 more years experience since then. These transmissions and the work I put out, I have been doing for between 4 and 5 years now. I now put them all out for free. They've been free for most of the time, and people who value my work tend to buy me a coffee or subscribe to the site, and many of these people who support me this way, well, without their help, you would not have this detailed analysis. So if you're new to this, or you haven't done so in a while, and there's 122 of you viewing right now, perhaps consider financially supporting me. Or don't. Either way, if we don't get to where we need to be, I'm done by Christmas, and you guys are on your own. I'm sure FIP will do this for you, or the Oldham Conservatives, or the Lib Dems. Yeah, stay focused. Stay focused. Forget about myocare for a minute, okay? Just forget about myocare. This is one of the reasons. I'm not criticising you, Denise. It's a collective thing. This is one of the reasons why we're in this mess. Our inability to stay focused and, on specifically what we're looking at. Myocare is very different, and I'll go through it one day, but not for now. I agree with that sentiment, Oldham. Judging by the large amounts of information passed on by workers there, it suggests they don't like their employer or their practices. Good evening, Lee. My friend Lee, she popped round the other day with in fact, Lee left me some Kit Kats, of which one I'm happily devouring right now. My apologies if I'm looking around all over the place. My computer's still broken. I took it to Apple today, and unfortunately I made a mistake of not buying it directly from Apple, but buying it from Currys because it was cheaper. It's out of warranty, but Apple would have repaired it because it's fair use or whatever it was. But I've got to write to Currys, otherwise I've got to pay £400 to repair it. So this side of Christmas I haven't got £400, so I'm waiting to hopefully get Currys to fix it for me. Let's carry on. So they give actions about, they give examples, but I won't bore you with that. They were effective. To give a review is effective in both places. Ratings were good. And is caring in both places, so ratings were good. But look at this. The targets. Child immunisation. Look at that. 79.2% he claims, but it's below 80%. You can see those, yeah. But there's a at the inspection, the practice provided us with unverified evidence that all their childhood vaccination rates were at 100%. The practice told us this was regularly monitored. But here is the actual data that the inspectors pulled out. All the childhood vaccination rates were at 100%. The inspector's not going to lie, is he? First one, 79.2%. Okay, the target, we can see. Second one, 75.5%. Third one, 75.5%. Fourth one, 75.5%. Fifth one, 68.8%. The percentage of children aged 5 who have received immunization for measles, mumps, and rubella. 68.8%. It's below the 80% uptake, which is why it's red. In comparison to World Health Organization target of 95%, it's well low. But the issue I have, more than how low it is that at the inspection, the practice provided the inspectors with unverified evidence that all the childhood vaccination rates were at 100%. And that this information was regularly monitored. What do you want me to say? Dr CHAUHAN was the lead for health. He's the deputy mayor of Oldham Council. Amanda Chadderton went on record yesterday to defend him. Jim McMahon would rather blame government cuts. This has got nothing to do with government cuts. Again, cervical screening data. Again, contrary to what Oldham Council claim on their I Love Oldham page, who are trying to defend Dr CHAUHAN's surgeries, the reason why not enough people have been adequately screened isn't because people have been refusing to take up screening. Whichever scumbag that is which runs or posts anonymously on the council funded, you fund it, the I Love Oldham page, attempting to defend this needs identifying and marching out, never to step foot in the civic centre or anywhere where you paid a salary again. Because, once again, the reason for the low uptake is clear. The practice told us they had a plan in place to meet the target and they now had sufficient staff to carry out cervical screening. So they are admitting that the reason for the low numbers and cancer kills, because that's what cervical screening is about, the reason they'd failed to meet those targets, as here, is because they did not have sufficient staff. Staff were consistent and proactive in helping patients to live healthier lives. Their staff were clearly trying their best. Remember, care is good, so the staff are good. The practice obtained consent to care and treatment in line with legislation and guidance, but documentation was not fully completed. The other two, DNA CPR, yeah, do not attempt CPR. Decision forms we examined. So this is serious stuff, yeah. Stated that CPR was unlikely to be successful, but the reasons were left blank. In both of these, the part of the form relating to the decision being reviewed had not been completed. They did not indicate if the decision was indefinite or needed reviewing. Pause. Let me just pause. You absorb that. Do not attempt CPR decision forms we examined stated that CPR was unlikely to be successful, but the reasons were left blank, and the consequence of that is that in both of these, the part of the form relating to the decision being reviewed had not been completed. They did not indicate if the decision was indefinite or needed reviewing. What are the consequences of that? Or what are the potential consequences of that? Someone whose life could be saved now will not be saved. Or am I some Pakistani, because a bunch of Pakistani goons are now, posting on Facebook trying to defend Dr. CHAUHAN and trying to attack me. Apparently I'm sensationalizing. Well, what's the consequence of that? Mate, you're lucky they were doing cervical screening with DBS cleared staff, because at the other one it might not have been. And yet again, and this is on purpose by the inspectors. So we're clear, this is on purpose by the inspectors. This is code. For those who know how to read these documents, or documents like this is code. These are alarm bells. Following the inspection, so you've just heard what they've said, what they found out. Reasons had been left blank. No indication if the decision was indefinite or needed reviewing. Right? You've seen that. That's what they found out, the inspectors. Following the inspection, the senior partner told us all patients with a do not attempt CPR decision had a full care plan in place and all relevant information was recorded in the care plans. But information on the do not attempt CPR decision forms had been left blank, and there was no indication on these forms if the decision was indefinite or needed reviewing. Amanda Chatterton is defending this man and defending these actions. I know they don't post on here, but I know, like the Conservatives, like the Liberal Democrats, like the Labour Party, the Failsworth Independents also watch and follow my transmissions. Brian Hoban is indeed the leader of the Failsworth Independents. And being the decent person he and his team are, and how they care for the people of Failsworth. I know he will make a statement. The party will make a statement. Thanks, Denise. Caring is good. You can see the staff are decent. Staff treated patients. This isn't on the staff. This is all about governance and management. This isn't on the staff. Staff treated patients with kindness, respect and compassion. feedback from patients was positive about the way staff treated people. At both surgeries. This isn't about the staff. This is difficult for me to even read to you. The practice did not always respect patients' privacy and dignity. The practice did not always respect patients' privacy and dignity. Limited waiting room space in the reception area. Patients were sat or queued next to patients at the reception desk. So even though the staff tried, the way it was set out, privacy could not be ensured, so people could eavesdrop. The senior partner told us they had plans to expand the area, which would help with it. They've got plans, haven't they? Lessons learnt, plans. You can see this pattern throughout all of this. It wasn't responsive. It requires improvement. They've got 200 asylum seekers there. Apparently it's an outstanding practice, the way they're working with 200 asylum seekers from the local hotel. And the reason why it requires improvement, you go again to this. Complaints were not used to improve the quality of care. So if you complained, you were ignored. That's what that means. Because if you complain and your complaint is not used to improve the quality of care you receive, what that means is that your complaints are ignored, dismissed, not acted on. Again, the same as the other surgery, difficult to work out how many complaints had been made due to the way they were recorded. No overall coordination of complaints. Beacon GP Care exposed again. I'll read it to you. Prior to the inspection, the practice supplied us with their complaints policy. This was from Beacon GP Care. Beacon GP Care was an umbrella company, blah, blah, blah. Apparently, approximately 10 GP practices are partners or part of Beacon GP Care. So that's a number we finally got. There's 10. The problem is that if Beacon GP Care if the complaints policy for the doctor's surgery is from Beacon GP Care, there's a contradictory complaints policy from Medlock Medical Practice, which also had a complaints policy, which had been reviewed in June 2022, so just months earlier. This stated that the operations manager was the complaint lead. So who's the complaint lead? Is it Beacon GP Care? Is it the operations manager at the, this surgery? Remember at the last surgery in Brighton? 8 of the 9 members of staff thought they were employed, wrongly thought they were employed by Beacon GP Care. The practice policy stated patients should be encouraged to complain verbally at the reception desk. This is the reception desk that has been identified as providing no confidentiality. The practices complaint tracker showed that one complaint had been made in the previous 12 months. So they've recorded one complaint in their complaints tracker. During the inspection, they examined the practices complaints folder. They found more complaints made in the previous 12 months than the one that they'd recorded. And then you follow the paper trail. 3 learning events held for the previous 12 months had risen from complaints. So if they have learning events, they read the paper. Why is this learning event taking place? Oh, there was a complaint, which is why. So we back follow this complaint, and it's not in their tracker. It's not in the complaints folder. You can see it's a mess. It's a complete mess. One complaint was of a clinical nature. This had been dealt with, but there was no evidence it had been directed to the senior partner. It was not included on the complaints tracker and was not documented as a learning event or complaint on Clarity TeamNet. More concerning perhaps, we saw a further complaint about a clinician. There was no evidence this had been directed to the senior partner. It was in a file marked waiting to be processed. But a final response had been issued. So even though it was waiting to be processed and no evidence of a senior partner's involvement, a final response had been issued. I shouldn't be laughing. A verbal complaint about a clinician had been made in July 2022. This was dealt with by a senior partner the day before our inspection. So their inspection was in September to July, so 2 months. And the complaint was not upheld. The senior partner told us it would now be recorded as a learning event, but the patient did not want to raise a formal complaint. Information relating to the complaint was made in the patient's clinical record. It is not good practice to do this. So if you complain, they're recording your complaint in the clinical records, in your medical notes. It's a no-no. It is not good practice to do this according to the Care Quality Commission. You can understand why. Well led requires improvement rather than inadequate, which was what it was at Royton Medical Centre. Before I go through this, I've got something stuck in my throat. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to put you on mute. What's the cough? Please, if you're finding value, if you're the 145 of you who are watching this and finding value, at least press the bloody like button. Okay. Is this medical centre well led? And there's a series of subsections to determine whether it is well led or not. Leaders could not demonstrate that they had the capacity and skills to deliver high quality sustainable care. So the leaders are the 2 senior partners, maybe the manager as well. They could not demonstrate that they had the capacity and skills to deliver high quality sustainable care. So Dr. CHAUHAN the former cabinet lead for health, Jim McMahon's mate, Andy Burnham's mate, put forward as some sort of expert doctor. This is his second of his practices. Leaders could not demonstrate that they had the capacity and skills to deliver high quality, sustainable care. And the reason for this? They were not always aware of the risks, issues, and challenges. So the challenges they spoke about during the inspection were not what the inspectors identified. So they didn't even know what was wrong. I mean, that's awful, isn't it? When you're operating at this level, of course, you know, we all get things wrong, but we know what were we going wrong. These people didn't even know where they were going wrong. Not all staff reported that the leaders were approachable and supportive. Well, that's very clear from some of the responses they've given. And they saw evidence that staff were able to progress through the company into leadership roles. So, you know, you can progress here as long as you toe the line. Clear vision, blah, blah, blah. The practice culture did not always support high quality, sustainable care. So I'm just checking my phone. The registered manager told us the freedom to speak up guardian was the senior GP partner. 7 of the 11 staff will receive feedback from answered yes to the question, is there a freedom to speak up guardian? 7 out of 11 isn't enough. It's only 11 bloody staff. 7 out of 11 isn't enough. That's what, 25% of your staff don't know? That's not enough. Interestingly, the registered manager told us that the senior partner was also the lead for whistleblowing. The learning events and complaints we reviewed or were told of did not demonstrate that people were always given an apology or explanation when things went wrong. Incidents where learning was required were not always discussed. %38% of respondents, remember a staff survey of 11, 38% of respondents stated they did not feel they were rewarded for their dedication and commitment towards their work. There you go, Jack. Timely. The practice had become a real living wage employer. Is that something to be proud of? After the money he rakes in, is that something to be proud of? We now pay the real living wage, and we've done it since the 1st of September 2022. The overall governance arrangements were ineffective. That means not fit for purpose. That's what the word ineffective means. The governance structures and systems were not regularly reviewed. Staff were not clear about their roles and responsibilities. And there was no appropriate governance arrangements with third parties. One of those third parties is clearly Beacon GP Care Limited. It's my nephew here. I had the last of your mum's chicken earlier, mate, for my tea. Mother is, clearly my cousin. And like most of my family, they know about my cooking skills. Well, let's just say I'm skilled in other ways. So my family, extended family and friends compensate. So yes, a very good evening. The practice is infection prevention and control policy. We've gone through that. Remember, They said it was from one place when really they were responsible to another. And the policy they'd come up with, I mean, the inspector's going through it again, which shows how bad it was. The practice provided us with a significant events policy. Although Medlock medical practice was recorded on the first page, a different medical practice was mentioned in the document. They can't even get the names right. The governance around significant events and learning events was not effective. Not all incidents were formally reported, and learning was not always documented or discussed. We've gone through that. You can see that. The system for managing complaints was ineffective. 5 of the 11 staff we asked told us they were employed by Beacon GP Care Limited. So again, that issue. In the other one, 8 of the 9 staff. In this one, 5 of the 11 staff. Something not quite right here, is there? When you don't even know who you're working for. The practice's new registration document stated there was a strict did not attend policy. If a patient did not attend 2 appointments with a reasonable excuse, they would be removed from the practice list. Wow. Information in the practice waiting area was different. It told patients if they did not attend 3 appointments in a 2-month period, they would be asked to find a new GP practice. So even that isn't right. The practice did not have clear and effective processes for managing risks, issues, and performance. There was no effective arrangements for identifying, managing, and mitigating risks. They're all right during the pandemic. The practice did not always act on appropriate and accurate information. Yeah. And engagement was actually good. Continuous improvement was okay. But learning was not shared. But these are some of the softer stuff. Where it matters, I think where it matters, it falls far short of the standards any of us would expect. And contrary to what Jim McMahon claims, or Amanda Chadditon's claims, or Bashforth claims, this has got nothing to do with GP funding. Knowing who you work for has got absolutely nothing to do with what government cuts might look like or not look like. This is a shoddy arrangement between a series of interconnected companies with a common denominator in Dr. CHAUHAN, who, by the way, as a senior GP partner here, by my reckoning, will all be earning the other side of £100,000. And he'll be earning a similar, if not more amount, at his state-of-the-art facility at Royton Medical Centre. And then probably, another 50, 100 grand at Bardock or whatever it's called, where he's a chief executive. That's separate to the allowances he earns as a counsellor. And it's separate to the invoices he submits directly. And nothing to do with the company he shares with his wife, AZ Medics. There's something else going on here. And the politicians who are too cowardly to speak out, well, then you are complicit in this. I don't care which party you belong to or who you are. If you do not speak out about this, if you don't question about this, if you don't put in a standards complaint, if you don't ask specific questions, because these are members of your community who go to these clearly inadequate, not fit for purpose, failing, whatever word you want to use. Doctor surgeries where Dr. Zahid Chauhan, Councillor Zahid Chauhan, is the senior partner. There is more. There's a lot more. I wanted to go through some other stuff. I'll leave it for Sunday, I think. I'll leave it for Sunday. But it gets... Do you really believe, those of you who've been in those council meetings, do you really believe the Lib Dem Louis Hamblet went digging and found all of that information about the subcontracting of over £100,000 or £600,000 to a company linked to Dr. Zahid Chauhan? Do you really believe Louis Hamblet did it? The guy who stood up and spoke passionately about, was it beavers or otters? And how the habitat was under threat. Do you believe that? Do you believe the malicious blogger published his article without permission from High Command? We know who High Command is, don't we? Keep your enemies close and Dr. Chauhan closer was a sort of strap line I put up with a photograph of Jim McMahon, Dr. Chauhan next to him, and one of the other councillors there was Mohan, the Chaditon councillor, Mohan Ali. There's been a parting of ways in the Muslim community with Jim McMahon. He's looked at the demographics, he's looked at the figures, and now, as a consequence of some of the work we did, campaigning we did, Oldham will not become a Muslim majority constituency, Oldham West and Royton, because they can't get rid of Royton. And we're not having this compact urban constituency, which basically is code for Muslim constituency. So the figures have been looked at. The Pakistani communities from St. Mary's and Alexandra aren't coming across. So my brother Jamal does not need the Punjabi samosas. He does not need the Punjabi samosas in the same way. And my Pakistani brethren, they have been ditched, part exchanged, kicked into touch for my alternative Bengali bootlickers. As a Bengali myself, I've got to say the samosas from my community are nowhere near as tasty. So Jim McMahon, who's moved to Chaditon Town Hall, as you all know. You own it, by the way. You've let him in on mates' rates rent. Has ditched the Pakistanis. And he's now tight with the Bengalis. Can be seen hanging out with Mohan Ali, with Nazrul Islam. Maybe he'll come back to Oldham Central Mosque for one of the sermons. One of my Muslim friends who goes there, you should call me when he's there. I'll come and visit. It's my mosque. So McMahon doesn't need Chauhan in the same way anymore. And McMahon isn't best pleased with Chauhan. Not just to do with this, because this is airing dirty laundry. Because I'm not, is there any conspiracy theory here? Is the Care Quality Commission's 2 inspection reports now, are they conspiracy theories? No. They're not. So what we've got is the Pakistanis have been ditched. The Bangladeshis are the ethnics of choice. Dr. Chauhan is bad news, but worse than being bad news. No, 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 my Pakistani friends, no. You need to know your place. How dare Dr. Chauhan have aspirations of becoming an MP? God forbid. If Dr. Chauhan can go to Pendle and become an MP, just what sort of aspirations will the other Pakistanis have? And where will these aspirations be? We can't have that. We can't have that. Can we, my brother Jamal? No love in this business, Julie. No love in this business. As I told my daughter when she was 2 years old, probably younger. Not that she understood any of it at the time. Hopefully she doesn't understand any of it now. I'd rather she grow up to be a prostitute than a politician. So, my sources are telling me that, how many years have I been doing this? So you can decide for yourself the authenticity of my sources. But my sources have been telling me that McMahon is behind the scenes, making moves that result in Dr. Chauhan being further exposed. Now I ask you once again, how many of you really believe Councillor Louis Hamblett went looking for a whole host of records and documents to do with Beacon GP Care Limited and Bar Cop or Bad Cop or whatever it's called, and uncovered those contracts and those arrangements? How many of you really believe that? How do you feel, lads? No accent here, no mocking now. To my Pakistani friends who watch this, and many of the how do you feel knowing that you need to know your place? And the minute you step out of line, you get your ass handed to you by your master. How do you feel about that? No, Denise, St. Mary's will vote for Arooj. I don't think you've understood what I tried to explain. McMahon's doesn't need the Pakistanis in the same way, because the Pakistanis from St. Mary's ward is not becoming part of Oldham West and Royton. It's staying at Oldham East and Saddleworth. So he doesn't need the 4,000 votes that kept. There's 4,000 votes, don't there? 5,000 votes with Alexander, 6,000 votes with Alexander. He doesn't need all those votes between St. Mary's and Alexander, which are predominantly Pakistani. Which is why he's looked at the demographics, looked at the data, and he's hanging out with the Bengalis. My name is Raja Mia. These are Recusant 9. I call him emergency transmission. I've been on every night, haven't I? I've been on every night. So if you value this, I'm out of candles, by the way. As you can see, the candles are going. That's because I'm out of candles. If you value these transmissions, and I've got so much more to share with you about what's going on here. Oh, And I'll share you something on Sunday. And then you decide where it's been leaked from, because I know it's being shared in multiple spaces, which is, wow, yeah. Which is a criminal matter, I think, involving dodgy contracts and stuff like that. Remember, the government were forced to intervene in Liverpool. They'll have to come and intervene in Oldham sooner or later. And I know whoever is going to be in prison, it's not going to be me. Despite their best efforts, it's not going to be me. If you find value in these transmissions, please, I was extremely disappointed yesterday. I'd put everything together, came on. I think 2 people, maybe 3 people bought me some coffees. You all tune in. 170 of you so far tonight. How many, I'll tell you now, how many viewed it yesterday? Give me 1 second. Yesterday's transmission. Last night's transmission. Whilst my computer whirs up. $471 so far yesterday night's transmission. 350 yesterday afternoon's transmission. Support me, lose me, makes no difference to me now. It's how I'm starting to feel, if I'm honest with you. I think I'll be alright stacking shelves in an Amazon warehouse. A very, very good night. Take care.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.